come up with a wonderful number of excuses. I'm too old. I don't do that very well. I'm just tired. It's just a small thing. If it doesn't get done and I don't do it, it's not going to make any difference. Nothing will change. I don't have time. I really don't feel good. I don't feel bad, but I just don't feel good enough to do that. And I've got to get ready for something that's happening 3 weeks from Tuesday. I got to get ready for that. I got a lot on my plate. But finally, the one that gets to me is, what does it really matter if it gets done at all? What does it really matter if anything gets done at all? And when we get, when you get, when I get, when we all get to the point where we think that when what we do as individuals, what we do as children of God in God's creation here on earth, when we begin to think that what we do doesn't matter, then we need to step away from the temptation of idle hands. And we need to be very intentional, and we need to be very active as we look within our hearts and within our souls and minds to see, what is it that God is calling me and you and us to be in His kingdom? And let me tell you, my friends, if you are upright and breathing, God is calling you to do something for Him and for His kingdom. Did you hear me? If you're upright and if you're breathing, there is a job God has for you to further His work on earth. As long as God allows us to live, to take a deep breath, to put one foot in front of the other and go, He has something, and this is the key word, He has something significant for us to do. Now, that's pretty darn simple. There's no gray area to it. We're living, we have a job. But that's something that we must hold on to and believe. We've got to believe it with everything in our hearts. Sometimes as we age and as we get older, I think that we begin to feel that our work is not terribly important and that our work is relatively insignificant. And we go through every day maybe thinking that what we do has little value and isn't important at all, has no importance. But friends, we need to see the larger picture and see how our job, our calling from God, our vocation that He has given to us fits into a much larger picture that we cannot see. We need to discover, as Martin Luther, the father of the Reformation, said, the ministry of vocation is something we all must know. We need to discover in our lives what it is God is calling us to do. Now, what we need to remember too is, as we age, as we go from season to season in our life, not summer, fall, winter, spring, but in the different seasons of our lives, that vocation and that calling is going to change. We're not doing the same things we did 20 years ago. We're probably not doing what we're going to do 10 years from now. So we've got to be open to God as He moves. When that Holy Spirit moves and doesn't blow down the flower arrangement, but moves in our hearts and says, I need you to do this. We've got to understand, we can't say, but that's not what I do. I've always done this in the past. This is what God needs us to do now. During World War II, Winston Churchill was Prime Minister. And he was traveling around England, and he was trying to motivate, and he was trying to inspire the citizenry of the UK. And he was willing to go anywhere at any time to encourage the English people in the war effort. Naturally, he would, of course, he'd visit the troops, and he also visited the farms because they supplied the food for the troops, and he visited the factories because they were supplying the material that was needed for the war effort, and he knew that although the odds were horribly stacked against the English and the Allies, that he must continue to help keep morale high. He visited group after group after group, but there was one group that he had not seen, and it was the coal miners. And someone asked him, Winston Churchill, the man of impeccable dress, if he would be willing to see these men in their domain, in the mine, under the ground, if he would be willing to spend some time with them and experience the dangerous conditions which they worked in. One gentleman told Churchill that the miners did not feel that they were doing very much in the effort against the Nazis, and he said that nobody ever gave the miners any credit for the work that they did. He pled with Winston Churchill to visit him. Naturally, the Prime Minister said, of course, I will visit him. And when he went to see the coal miners, they were absolutely amazed that he was there. They couldn't believe that the Prime Minister, say it for me, John.
The Prime Minister.
Thank you. I wish I had his English accent. They could not believe that he would lower himself to see them. And all they could do was stare with their dirty faces at the man who would lead Britain to victory. His words will never be forgotten by those miners down in those mines that day as he shouted to them, "We will be victorious." Over and over again, he shouted that line, and he said, "We will preserve our freedom. And years from now, when our freedom is secure and peace reigns, your children and your children's children will come and they will say to you, 'What did you do to win our freedom in that great war?' And one will say, 'I marched with the Eighth Army.' And someone else will proudly say, 'I manned a submarine.' And another one will say, 'I guided the ships that moved the troops and the supplies.' And the last one might say, 'I was a doctor, and I doctored the wounds.'" Those men, the miners, sat there under the ground with rapt attention, wondering in their hearts and minds, what is it he's going to say about us? "They will come to you," he shouted to those men down there, "and you will say with equal right and with equal pride, 'I cut the coal. I cut the coal that fueled those ships and delivered those supplies, that allowed the factories to run. Had it not been for the coal, which may be the low man on the totem pole, all of the other never would have gotten done. That's what I did. I cut the coal." In God's kingdom, here on this earth, every one of us, no matter where we are in life, has a job, a calling, a vocation that comes from God. We can't use our pitiful excuses. He doesn't allow them. What we must do is listen. We must hear, and we must act. And when we listen, and when we hear, and when we act upon God's calling to us, we are one step closer to the prophecy that Sheila read from Isaiah this morning. And we become a significant part